And so somewhere along that highway, I broke. And it wasn't that cute, like composed, wipe a little tear away. No, no, no. It was an ugly cry. I had mascara running all the way down me and I couldn't get away. My dignity was on the dashboard and it was okay.
Okay, let me tell you why I'm so excited about today. First of all, I'm really excited that you're here. So today I have Nicole Cormier. You are a change management consultant with Unleashing Leaders. And before I hand this over to you, what I want to say is I'm really excited to kind of get some insight from you on human dynamics and what you find among executives that you work with, all these people. And I will give you a tidbit that for so long, when I heard of Unleashing Leaders and I kind of knew generally, my thought was that it was literally just coaching C-suite execs, leadership stuff, everything like in that realm. And then speaking to you, and I know that it's evolved so much, but I want you to touch on all of that and just, I'm going to hand it over to you and I want you to kind of share how you got into this role that you're in and like what prompted that move and why you love it, and exactly maybe hone in a little bit more on what Unleashing Leaders is before you dive into big topic, which I'm really excited about today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I know we've talked about doing this for a long time. And when you talk about what is my story and what do I have to lend, it's an interesting topic. And getting ready for this was one of those crash moments where I was like, I'm not that interesting. I'm not that interesting. And then last night at 7 o'clock, my husband was like, just start writing. And 20 pages of notes later, here I am, and I'm just so thankful and grateful to be here. So, yes, as you mentioned, I'm an organizational change management consultant, and Unleashing Leaders is by nature leadership and organizational development. We're a consulting firm that partners with organizations to really accelerate the change. And how do we do that? We really do that by developing courageous leaders who are building high performing teams and are dedicated to creating a culture that thrives and not just survives. As you mentioned, we started 26 years ago. Lee Scott, who was our entrepreneur, solopreneur for a long time, he did start off doing leadership coaching. He started off in that C-suite executive coaching sessions. And then they were coming back to him saying, this is all really great, but when we put it into practice, we can't make it stick. It's not sticking. And so they were saying, we need help on this particular project, or we have this particular thing that's coming up and we just can't get our team to get out of its own way. And so through that, we evolved to now offering several different services, including project management, where leaders are like, I have so much on my plate right now. I don't have the expertise. I don't have the teams. I don't have the time to get it done. And they just hand the project over to us, to very specific things that leaders say, hey, I need help in X. And we go in and we just, spot check it. We do some really great facilitation. In my particular role that I love so much is really helping organizations remember and understand the human side of change. Change is hard. And humans by nature, we don't like it. We like things to be, status quo. We like to keep things the way that they are. And so when things happen, especially at work, work is so much more than just a 9 to 5er. For a lot of us, it's our identity. It's who we are. It's what we do. It's how we provide. And when there's a little pothole in the road or a speed bump or a change at work, it can throw us for a loop. And so I really started by asking the question, why? And I think as an organization, that's what we start doing, is we look at teams and we start saying, why is someone showing up like that? Why are they making the choices that they're making? Why are they the roadblock in getting this to push forward? And we use that change adoption curve and we really start diving into, what is making somebody tick? Why is somebody doing that? And for me, in my particular role, I'm less interested in what is happening and more about why it's happening. So when we go in with co-facilitators, a lot of times I'll be facilitating and I'll literally just forget what I'm doing and just start watching. Like, I love being a scientist. I'm a scientist of people, I guess. And I love to just watch people. And I look for the person in the room who isn't speaking up. And I think, that person probably has the answer that could unlock all of this, but there's something that's holding them back. And then you have the person in the room who is the loud, boisterous, doesn't want to hear anybody else's opinion but their own. I think, what were you operating from? Why are you operating in that space? And so as an organization, we really step in and we help calm the chaos that change brings. We help, identify and acknowledge the emotional impact of change and then push the work forward for leaders.
Nicole, can I ask you, when you are observing the people in the room, more often than not, would you say the shy person versus the really boisterous person, would you say that you're able to easily find where that stems from? Like maybe with talking to them, is it maybe the boisterous person is nervous, is operating out of a place from nerves or anxiety, and so to be louder, to try, kind of fake it till you make it type deal?
Yeah.
And then maybe the shy one. I just wonder if it's as easy to, you've been doing this so long and you've been studying people and just the dynamics of them in all of these situations that you're in. But is it pretty clear? Like, has it become more clear, I guess, over the years what those people are either lacking, where they're coming from? Are you able to pinpoint it easier?
There are definitely patterns in human behavior that we turn to, and there's a lot of frameworks that people fit into, everything from the MBTI to the DISC assessments, and we can kind of look at those people and say, oh, you've got the extroverted energy, or oh, you're an introvert and you're just simply processing. But I find that if you just stay curious and you just really show up in a place of curiosity and you start asking, why haven't we heard from you today? I was just in a facilitation a few weeks ago, and there was somebody who we knew from just prior experience and researching this person that they are a top-notch contributor. But this person was really, really quiet. And there was a room of probably 25 people, and it was a new team, and we were trying to kind of go through that norming process and helping them kind of figure out why we're struggling in certain spaces and the work was stalling. And during a break, we just stopped and said, I've just noticed that you're quiet today. Is there anything that we can help facilitate out of you for the greater good of the group? And she was really, really genuine. And she said, I just need some time to process. I just need some time to catch up. She said the conversation is moving so quickly that I just need time to step back and process what's being said. And then when my idea comes to me or my input comes to me, it will come out. And it did. And it came out very eloquently. And when she spoke, the room stopped and the room listened. And so sometimes it's really just showing up and asking people the question, what's going on and how can I help? The people who are loud, sometimes they're operating in a place of fear, right? I'm scared somebody might find out I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm afraid that, oh my gosh, I might be the imposter in the room. And I know we're going to talk about that in a little while, but it might be a place of fear. And so our job really as change agents is to be good thought partners, and to come alongside and say, hey, in this meeting, I noticed that you talked more than you listened. And as a leader, we really want to make sure that we're listening more than we're talking. And I find that with a lot of executives, they are really receptive to that. They'll be like, oh, I really do that when I'm nervous, or, oh, I didn't even notice that. And it's good to kind of just get people to calm down. So yes, there are patterns. Yes, we can usually predict those, but we don't let that be our North Star. We just really kind of stop and show up in that person and just meet them where they're at, talk with them and say, what can we do? And how can we get you out of your shell? Or how can we, maybe put you in your shell a little bit?
Right. No, I think that's really cool, of even just the fact that my next question was going to be, do you find that a lot of people are resistant to talking to you? Because yes, nobody really loves change, especially in a workforce. But when you have people come in to kind of help you facilitate everything, do you ever find people that don't want to talk to you at all? But you're saying execs will like recognize it, and leaders, and that's refreshing to know that people do listen. I mean, especially I guess if you are working for a company and you are maybe at the top, that you're bringing people in to help you. You're asking for help. You've already admitted that. So now let's allow them to help you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do get there's definitely leaders out there that are just stubborn, and they definitely are more resistant to that, to recognizing that change. It is hard to admit that you don't have it all together. And it's hard to let someone come in and say, let me partner with you. Let me think this through. Let me find your blind spots, expose them, and then help you work through them. But we really can't change what we don't acknowledge. And I think as leaders, we want to be better. We want to grow. We want our teams to grow. And then there's that bottom line that's associated with all of it. If I have a team that's just spinning, it's my responsibility as a leader to get them out of that spin. And sometimes I might be a part of that. I might have a hand in that spin. And so I have to step back and I have to look at myself. And then I have to say, gosh, what can I do to help unmix this, ball of fishing line that I seem to have gotten myself into? And it's a really normal part of team forming, right? When we look at high performing teams, they have to go through that storming process. They have to get in that spin, then they have to kind of form themselves. And then finally they can work into that, performance stage. And as a leader, we have to stop and ask ourselves, I'm asking my team to show up. I'm asking my team to be vulnerable. And if I can't be vulnerable myself, then what kind of leader am I?
So a lot of self-awareness. You have to get to that point of self-awareness. That's fascinating. No, I love it. Tell me a little bit about, you've been with Unleashing Leaders for 6 years?
6 years.
Okay. And what were you before? What did you do before that?
I taught 3rd grade.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
I spent 15 years in education. Started out teaching. I taught a year in 4th grade, switched down to kindergarten. And I will say there is a special place in heaven for kindergarten teachers. I will never, my principal, after I got, my feet underneath me, my principal would often say, if you don't behave, I'm going to send you back to kindergarten. And I was like, oh gosh, please don't do that. Please don't make me go back to kindergarten. So God bless the kindergarten teachers out there. And then I was 3rd grade and then ultimately ended up in 5th grade before I left education. So yeah, completely different world from where I am now. Yeah. But so many similarities, managing conflict, dealing with timelines and setting up goals and helping people achieve those and work through those problems and being resilient, having the grit. The corporate America actually has a lot of alignment with a 3rd grade classroom, that's for sure.
I love that. Because it just makes so much sense. Like, yeah, you're doing all the same. It's just these similar things, but people of different ages, people of different levels now, but just the basics of dynamic. It's just back to that dynamic, the human dynamic that I find so fascinating. Yeah. So your favorite part, would you say, of your role now, what would you say? Like, what energizes you every day?
I think for me, it really is, what I love most about my job is helping great leaders intentionally shape their cultures. When we talk about initiatives and we talk about metrics and we talk about OKRs and KPIs and all the things that have to be met, oftentimes culture becomes a poster on the wall. And yet it really is fundamental to the success of any organization. I don't know if you've worked in organizations where the culture is negative and people are just not happy in their jobs versus, high performing organizations that have a deep commitment to their culture. So for me, I really like helping, build culture through everyday conversations, behaviors that are reinforced, that are positive, celebrating, and then just sitting with leaders, slowing them down a bit and reminding them that the people around them are human, they're human, and working in kind of creating that environment that just makes work fun.
I think that's very crucial to have a place where, I think a lot of people have experienced toxic work environments, whether they want to say toxic or not, just where you feel real sick going, you're not happy. And then that's how you lose good employees. A good team can be destroyed because someone's not taking accountability for the way they treat others, for maybe just the negative environment that they've created. I know I've been in those in the past, and it's really detrimental to not only just maybe the team and the staff, but the overall morale that could then continue and go forward even when you do eventually leave that job or when something is finally done after so long. So the importance of having good people leading and kind of collaborating and partnering with and doing all the things that they ask of you to do as well, right? That's also a good leader, is I'm doing this with you. I'm not just dictating everything that needs to be done in certain situations. But as a former small business owner also, I loved coaching, developing my team because it was their success, my success kind of measured on their success also, right? If they thrived, then I thrived as well. So that was kind of a beautiful thing. So I just know the importance of having cohesive and collaborative work environments. And that's, I love that you get to experience that and like work with people every day. That's a very cool thing. And it probably comes very full circle when you see these businesses that you start with, and not just businesses, organizations, because you guys work with some pretty large organizations. You're kind of all level, big level to, okay.
Yeah, we work with everything from large government agencies all the way down to the mom and pop shop who just want, a quick spot check of how do I build my business? How do I start my business? All the way up to large, like I mentioned, public health care is a place that we really do excel in. And I think, you mentioned something earlier is we embed ourselves with our clients. And when we show up and we don't have good relationships with one another and we're not collaborating and we don't trust one another within our UL team, it radiates out to our clients. They can feel it. They can see it. They start to, distrust us. And the bottom line is our clients put a lot of trust in us. I mean, we pull up chairs right next to the director's office and we embed ourselves with them. We become part of their organization. And if we don't bring a positive culture to whatever they're struggling with, we can't be trusted, which makes us really seem like an oxymoron when I say we're trusted change agents. And so to really be able to walk in and model the way for our clients and show them what a strong culture is really impactful. And it brings so much value and it brings so much trust to the relationships that we build. Unleashing Leaders has been around for, 26 years now. And we've never done marketing. We've never needed to really sell anything because the number one thing that we've gone out and created with people is relationships. And not just a handshake or a, hey, I see you at a chamber event once in a while. It is truly getting to know somebody at that personal level. It is getting to understand what makes them tick. What are their passions? What do they want to see their legacy as a leader be? And then really get in there and help mirror that. And then through that, strong culture is developed. And that's really what I think is just a phenomenal part of what I get to do every day.
That's awesome. So let's say just, I guess, generally, when you have a large, let's use just a general healthcare organization, just for timing purposes for my brain.
Sure.
How long do you tend to work with people when they're implementing something, when something's changing in this business that you need to be all hands on deck and it's a large organization? Are you talking multiple, like years or less?
No, that really depends on what the project, why we've come to that particular organization. We have some of our legacy clients that we've been with for, 20, 25 years. And then we have some where we just pop in and do our job. We're called Unleashing Leaders for a reason. What our main objective is we want to go in and we want to train up the internal team. We want to make sure that internal team has the skills, has the leadership capabilities, has the knowledge that they need to really unleash themselves and then their team. So I think what makes us a little bit different from typical consulting firms is we don't want to go in and hook up a client who's already on life support and just bleed them dry, right? We want to go in, we want to heal them, we want to bring life back to whatever, we want to help them manage whatever transformation or change or project that they're implementing. And then we want to go. We want to unleash them to go on and make impact. So, one of our strategic goals was to impact 1 million leaders worldwide. And we can't do that if we just stick with a handful of clients forever. So we really do want to go in and unleash them and then move on. And I think that's really a special thing to be able to do. Now, we might move from project to project within some of our larger legacy clients, but for the most part, we really do not go in and say, we're going to saddle up and we're never leaving.
Yeah. I think with everything you're explaining and just the way you're talking about UL to begin with, it's very rewarding. It's obvious that it's very rewarding to you. And I know Lee, and Lee's amazing. So when you create an environment like that amongst yourselves as well, but when you have that reward of all of the help that you're giving others and just kind of the direction and the partnerships, the relationships are really everything in so many businesses. But when you're bringing in trusted people, because you do trust them to help get you to the next step of whatever it is, I love that you feel that rewarding feeling as well. It just, when it's so cohesive like that it's a beautiful thing to be in that position, to be able to help others, to be able to see the results, and then to know that, yeah, you do get to unleash them to now do grow, right? It's kind of like to flourish and to go.
Yeah, we love to just give them wings and let them fly, I guess.
Yes.
And it's great because it goes even larger and the impact goes even wider than that. It's like a ripple effect. I work with one or two leaders, one or two teams, a project. In fact, we just recently got through a strategic planning for a local community here in the Valley. And I think, wait a minute, I live in that community. I raise my kids in that community. The things that they want to do in the next 5 years, those impact me. those impact my neighbors. Those impact the people who are moving here because this valley is such an amazing place to lay down roots. And so when you have a leader who is a visionary, has this amazing idea, you really start to say the impact goes so much further. And it's about, kids, it's about families, it's about protecting the way of life here. And so being able to be a thought partner with that leader and being able to help their vision come to life in an accelerated fashion is so rewarding because I see already, the strategies that we help this community implement are already coming to life. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I remember that conversation. And now there's the building of the new park. Or, oh my gosh, I remember that conversation that we talked about wanting to be able to be a, one-stop shop for people to come in and get community information. And now it's up and flourishing and I see people accessing that.
That's so cool.
It's so great to be able to see just an itty bitty seed of an idea grow and flourish and support and help so many people in our communities.
Oh, I love that. I love that then you get to see it. And of course it's because it's our community and because you are helping others in the community, but it's just, I feel like something like that would even be more rewarding and more like affirming of this is why I do this, right? This is why I love my job and the role that I get to take every day.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. Okay. So we're going to talk about something exciting today.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to turn this over to you just because it's that term, it's that concept that we hear about, and maybe not everybody knows exactly what it entails and what the real definition of it is, but we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome today. And I would love to hand this over because I know that you've done the deep dive and you know a lot about this whole concept. So I'd love to turn it over to you and have you kind of take it away and teach. I just want to learn more. So when I hear it and I know, like, how am I putting this correctly? Right? To me, it's always make sure you're understanding something before you start using this term all the time. And in my initial mind, like even in the beginning when we started talking today and I said, the person who's loud and boisterous, is it like fake it till you make it? I think there's that part of me that thinks, is imposter syndrome fake it till you make it? Because that's something, I mean, having owned a hair salon for years, that's something my stylists would always say, like you just fake it till you make it. But I think it's way deeper than that. So I think that that's very surface of just my understanding. So I'm going to hand it over to you to take us on this journey.
I'm really excited to talk about this because as, I always like to start by saying, hi, I'm Nicole. I'm a recovering imposter. But I really didn't lean into it until I switched careers. And when I switched careers, it reared its head in a way that I never could have imagined. But when I started thinking about it and I started really kind of going back and saying, there's got to have been somewhere along the line that there was this pivotal moment in time that something happened and all of a sudden I'm an imposter. But I don't really know where that is. I think it starts, and I think it's just part of this journey that I've walked for the last umpteen years, if you will. But imposter syndrome is, there is definitely an element of fake it till you make it. There is an element of feeling like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve to be here. My success is because somebody else did something for me at a certain point in time. But when I was getting ready for to come on today, I was just doing a little bit of research and I learned that 70% of people have some version of imposter syndrome.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I was really shocked by that. And of that, 45% of them are women. And I started to really kind of think about that. And I started to say, what is it? What messages are we sending women that we don't deserve to be here, that we shouldn't be here. We can't be proud of ourselves. And so I really kind of started to go back and I was like, gosh, I needed somebody to blame. So where did I go? I went to my parents and I'm like, it's your fault. But I didn't. And it was interesting. So when people start to hear my story today, they often assume that imposter syndrome is, when I changed careers and I went to corporate America, but I really started to say, wait a minute, it's got some deeper roots. And I started to think of as a kid. I grew up on a farm. You want to talk about the quintessential Idaho youth. That was me. My parents farmed on a farm right outside of Idaho. I'm fourth generation Idahoan. But we never celebrated accomplishments because there was always something else to get done. There was animals to feed. There was harvest to do. There was something had broken somewhere along the line. And so we didn't. So I was starting to watch, as a kid, my friends would get the $5 for A's, or we'd go to McDonald's for report cards or whatever. And I would take that home, and my parents were very proud of me. I knew my parents were proud of me, but I didn't get the celebration. It just wasn't what we did. And then I started to learn that, as a kid and as an ag family, you really start to say, all of this success could be gone tomorrow. So you become very humble about your success. And if you are in farming, you generally get a loan in the spring and then you don't pay it off until after harvest. And so you're always kind of living and working on borrowed money. So you get a disease, you get a drought, something goes sideways on you and you're not paying back that loan. So there's this idea that was instilled in me as a kid of we don't brag. We don't be boastful. We don't share our accomplishments because they could be gone tomorrow. Now I want to make it perfectly clear that I had amazing parents and I grew up, my sister and I had no idea what stranger danger was. We were out in the middle of nowhere. We would ride our bikes till dark and some person would pull up in their pickup truck and say, "Hey, it's getting kind of dark. Let me take you home." And be like, "Okay." And growing up and watching the challenges of being a farming family, I learned how to be resilient and I learned grit and I learned hard work. But I think as I started to really kind of move through life, success was just what was expected. It's just what we did. We just worked hard and we found success in there. And we talked about, we were more humble than we were proud. We were a very proud family, but we were humble about it. We didn't talk about it. We didn't have Facebook back then, but it just wasn't what we did. And so I started to really kind of think about it. And I was wondering if the voice that I started to sell myself was, we just don't celebrate accomplishments because there's just something else to get done. And then I was probably 14 maybe. And my dad started telling me, there's always going to be someone smarter than you. And there's always going to be someone that's more athletic, someone that's better looking, someone that's got more talent, but you will never let anyone outwork you. And so at that time, it was so motivating to me, right? I was like, I will out hustle anyone. If you're on time for practice, that means you're 5 minutes late. But it did. Those things, that statement stuck out to me so much because it taught me, discipline, and it taught me perseverance and the value of effort and hard work over natural ability. And it reminded me that I couldn't control everything, but what I could control is how hard I worked. And then looking back, I also realized the story that I started to tell myself about that was hard work meant you had to work hard because you're never going to quite measure up. You've got to always prove yourself. You have to show up and you have to be better than the person sitting beside you. And no matter what you do, it's never going to be quite good enough. And I started to believing that, there was someone better and there was someone that was always just a little bit smarter and a little bit. And rather than looking at them as an example and a mentor, I started to say, I just need to work harder. I just need to be better. And I think that little voice inside of my head started to tell me that. Like, oh, well, you didn't work hard enough. That B plus, well, if you would have worked a little harder, you would have got an A. Katusha got an A, you should have got an A. And it really started to kind of tell me that, I learned looking back, I guess, that no amount of hard work will fix a belief that says you're not enough. You can't out hustle that voice. You can't outwork that voice. And don't get me wrong, today I still believe in hard work. I believe that you get up, you make hay while the sun is shining, if you will. And one of the greatest gifts that my parents gave me was the ability to work hard. But it did start to kind of say, no matter what you do, you're just not going to be good enough. And that's really carried on. And so when I was about, 16, I decided I'm going to enter a beauty pageant. And it was on I don't know what I was like, you know what, I'm done with this farm life for a minute. I'm going to enter a beauty pageant. And I've never been one that shied away from the challenge. I've always wanted to try new things and do new things. What possessed me to do a beauty pageant at 16? I don't know. But I won.
Nice.
I did. Yes. I was Idaho Miss Teen in 1994.
Okay. Did you have to do things for it?
I did things. I
Like
did
talents?
parades and we did I met a ton of people. I did a ton of public speaking, went to schools, really was that role model. And it stretched me. It stretched me in a way I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And as much confidence as you had to step on, I went to the national pageant back in Minnesota, competed against 51 other girls. I actually made the top 15.
I love this.
I didn't win the national title, but I did make the top 15.
Hey, Nicole, you're a beautiful woman, so I can imagine even growing up, but I'm so happy that you had the confidence to do it.
It's so funny that you mentioned their confidence because for that entire year, I was like, what am I doing? are you sure they didn't? Like, I kept waiting for them to call and say, we got the wrong girl. You really didn't win. And every time I got up there, I thought to myself, they don't really want me. Something happened to the real winner. Like somebody miscounted something. And I kept telling myself, can I live up to this? Like, okay, now I won. Now I have to prove to everybody that they made the right decision. So while I learned so much and stretched myself in so many ways, looking back, I see how having that crown changed the way that people saw me, but it really didn't change the way I saw myself. I still didn't see myself as good enough. I still didn't see, I was giving speeches to young girls that was about, building self-confidence and being proud of who you are. All while that voice inside my head was saying, you've got them fooled, don't you? And living with that and walking away just saying, oh my gosh, what if they knew? They're going to find out I really don't deserve to be here. They really don't. At some point, they're going to figure it out. They're going to know that they've made a mistake, that I'm not the right person, that the crown should have gone to somebody else. And I think that was probably one of the earliest experiences. I didn't know it was imposter syndrome at the time, but I would later then learn after I picked up a book by Valerie Young called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. It was exactly that. It was exactly that imposter syndrome voice popping up into my head that was saying somebody else was prettier, somebody else was smarter, somebody else had more sponsorships, and they just accidentally picked you. And I didn't really understand because I didn't have the language, but I was living it and I was feeling it. Now the accomplishments were changing, the expectations were changing, but again, the story didn't. And it really became a pattern throughout my entire life that every new accomplishment felt it felt like less than of a finish line and more like just another opportunity that I deserved to be here, another opportunity that I had to prove that I was worthy of sitting at the table that I had been invited to. So that was probably the first time it really kind of started to bubble up. And then I graduated from high school, and I decided I was going to go to college. I was the first one in my family to finish college. And I was excited. I felt like it was significant for me to finish that degree. I got a degree in abnormal psychology from, I think at that time it was Albertson College. Then it went back to the College of Idaho. Then it switched names a couple of times, but it was the Albertson College when I was there. And it felt like getting that degree was less about me and more about my family. It was really about accomplishing something that both my parents had set out to do and weren't able to finish. Life just didn't allow them that experience. So I loved it. But looking back, I think I was carrying a couple of different motivations at that time. One was, the excitement of learning. I'm a lifelong learner. I love to, learn new things, like documentaries, you name it. I love to learn about it. And then the other one was that voice inside my head that really was saying achievement somehow equaled worth. And the more I achieved, the more worthy I was. So I majored in psychology, abnormal psychology specifically. I was fascinated by people. I wanted to learn why people did what they did. And I had a plan to go on to medical school and become forensics, go into really forensic psychology. And, you see them on like the profilers on TV. And that's really what I had thought about, doing and learning. I wanted to understand more about what shapes human behavior and why people choose to do the things that they do in the criminal world. And more importantly, how do you prevent that from happening? How do we stop things from happening by intervening with positive mental health and helping support people and provide that support and wondering and asking the question, can people change? Do they want to change? And I smile when I think about that because in that way, I'm doing exactly that now. Not necessarily with criminals, but with corporates. And I do love it. I do love looking at that human behavior and asking people, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you in your own way? Do we need to get out of that? And helping folks understand, yes, people can change. They might not want to. They might be resistance. We might have to put some plans in place or, a little trickery here and there, but we can definitely help people make that change. So I was headed off to medical school. I was planning on having these big dreams with the FBI and profiling, and I was going to be the next, Criminal Minds.
Criminal Minds.
That's where I was headed.
BAU.
But wow, life has a way of rewriting our plans. And I became a mom. I became a mom the day before my 21st birthday. And I was in my junior year of college, and I was like, I found myself standing at this crossroads. The the future that I had wanted was suddenly very, very different. I wasn't quite sure what it was going to look like, but I knew I couldn't do medical school. I knew I couldn't leave my family. I knew I was going to have that support. And so I needed something that was going to create stability, and I needed something that was going to provide an opportunity and a future. So at that point, I made a choice, and I said, okay, I can do a couple of different things. I can hold on really, really tight to this plan, and I can force myself to go through it, or I can write a new one. And I pivoted, and I pivoted hard. I graduated with that degree, and then I said, you know what? I think I'll go back and get another one. And I went back and I got a degree in education. And again, my goal was to understand, now child behavior. And at that time, we were starting to see kind of an uptick of emotional disturbances in schools, and kids in general education classrooms were really struggling to kind of balance out having the ED kids in their emotionally disturbed kids in their classroom. And I really wanted to help those kids. I wanted to understand the behavioral challenges. I wanted to work with kids who were coming from rough situations and help them understand that you can stop that cycle and you can make different decisions. We can't control what mom and dad do, but we can help control what we do. So again, a lot of what I'm doing right now, I can't control what other folks are doing, but I can definitely control myself. And education really did give me a front seat view of human development. I had students at all levels. I taught kindergarten through fifth grade, and I watched kids navigate fear, and I watched kids build confidence and have their confidence shaken, and I watched them find ways of belonging, of motivating themselves and others, and I watched kids deal with things that even as an adult would probably rock my world, and they did it with such grace and such maturity that I had kids that were homeless. I had kids that were coming from domestic violence situations. And I wanted to be that one solid constant in their life. I wanted to help them understand that they could create their own change, and they could do that through learning and through education. And I watched just kids learn and grow and flourish for 13 years. But there was a voice again inside my head that kept saying, am I doing enough? Am I enough? Am I helping enough people? Do I have enough value? Am I adding enough value? And, that darn imposter syndrome, it has a way of really kind of moving the goalpost when you least expect it. And every accomplishment, it creates a temporary relief. It's sort of like, that drug. You accomplish something, you get that high, you think, okay, I got this. But if your identity is really built on proving yourself and proving that you belong, your next challenge just becomes the next thing that you believe you have to do. So I applied to graduate school because, being a mom and working full time wasn't enough.
Just keep going. Yeah.
And I probably forgot to mention when I applied. Well, I applied to graduate school once and I didn't make it. And so I applied again, and I got the word. I was 7.5 months pregnant with my son when I got the word that I had been accepted into NNU's counseling program. And it started, my son was due the 1st of April, came the last week of March, and the program started in May. Everybody around me was like, take a year off. And I'm like, I failed once. I don't fail. And two, I certainly don't fail twice. And so I loaded up my little boy at about 3.5 weeks old, and we went to graduate school. And I will give kudos to NNU. They brought us in. They said, we're family friendly. We are non-traditional. So bring him along. And for 3 years, he went to school with me. And when he graduated, he got his little cap and gown. And they were amazing to just welcome my learning and my family and what I had to do to balance being a mom and having 2 kids and really kind of, working within what that was going to look like. And so I achieved, really something that no one in my family had done before. Not only did I graduate from college once, I graduated from college 3 times. And I really wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I was balancing graduate classes. I then left my job and went to work for the state. So I was working in a contracted situation with 3 different school districts in the state, providing services that helped reunification of families. So these were kids who had been taken away from their families, put in foster care, and were now trying to come back. So I provided counseling services for a school district that was really kind of in the hotbed of foster care. So I was working in that space. I was balancing motherhood. I was working in all the responsibilities that come with that. And I got hit with a divorce. and it was a difficult divorce. It was fairly public, but I really kind of found myself in that space of saying again, what did I do? What did I have to? What was wrong with me? What did I do wrong? I wasn't enough. I wasn't worthy enough. If I would have done this, well, my family wouldn't have fallen apart. But I really didn't have time to worry about that. I had to just get up and I had to go forward and I had to find a way to support my kids. So I kept teaching. Um, and I really just kind of started to see things at that time of, I was really struggling with inadequacy. I just really didn't feel like I could do anything right. And my parents stepped in and they were great. My dad has a way of calling a spade, if you will. And he just sat me down one night and he was like, it doesn't matter what happened then. What happens now is you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you start moving forward. If for not yourself, then your kids. And so with that, I really started to say, okay, I can do this. I threw myself into my career. I was teaching. I had left the district. My ex-husband and I worked in the same school district. And so I needed to kind of distance myself from that. So I resigned from that position and took a classroom position in another district. And I threw myself into it. And I got really good at it. Like could just show up at 8 and start teaching school at 8:10. I was doing some teacher prep with NNU, helping place student teachers and working with their programs in their practicum students, getting those out in field placements and doing some instructional coaching with other teachers and leading professional development. And I really was like, okay, I got this, right? I didn't hear that voice for a really, really long time. I didn't hear that voice. That voice had quieted. And then COVID hit. And I think like so many of us, I started questioning, what am I doing? Where am I headed? Is this really, really is this what I want? I was trying to navigate life as a single mom and I was really thinking, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to make this work? And for a really long time, I carried that weight. And although I didn't hear the voice, it was there. I could feel it. There was always something that was missing. There was always something that was not quite complete. And I realized in that point, my kids, I was trying to be that perfect mom, right? That Pinterest mom. And I was trying to show up in that, my classroom, make my classroom perfect and make my life look perfect. And I realized very quickly that my kids didn't need a perfect mom. My students didn't need a perfect teacher. They just needed one that showed up. They just needed a real one, a genuine one, one that said, I'm not okay. And I really started doing a lot of learning. I started to fix myself. And I started to say, okay, I got to figure this out. Like, I got to just understand where I'm headed and what life was going to look like. And I started to stop saying, I'm a divorced mom. I'm a single mom. I stopped saying that my identity is built on circumstances because that changes. And if I could change my identity every time my circumstances changed, I was never going to get my feet on the ground. So I did exactly what most high achieving women do. I worked harder and I earned more credentials. And if there was a certificate out there to earn, I decided to earn it and I went after it. And I had so many letters behind my name. It was like alphabet soup. And I just got really good at achieving things. I just started saying, gosh, the more I accumulate, the more accomplishments I have, the longer my resume is, then somehow I'm going to be valuable. I'm going to be worthy. And my therapist started saying, no, you're going to learn how to date yourself. You're going to take yourself out to dinner. You're going to learn that, life, your identity isn't dependent upon what other people think. Your identity isn't about what you have, the accomplishments, the letters behind your name, the degrees, all of the things. So after 13 years of being single, I said, okay, I think I can date again. And oh Lord, what a journey that was. And I, in 2017, met my now husband. And he had an incredible ability to see the broken parts in me. He could really just pick out those pieces and say, there's where I started to get a little emotional because it was so special. He just could meet me where I was. And he said, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be you. Because when you're you, you're amazing and you're fun and you're insightful and you bring so many things to the table. He saw those insecurities. He saw that imposter. Like I think at one point he even gave her a name. And he was like, okay, so we would make fun of him. He's like, okay, so who am I talking to here? Is this Nicole? Is this the imposter? Where are we at? But he really became an anchor for me during a season where I was really trying to figure out who I was in this next chapter of life. So we've been together now almost 10 years, and we built a life that I just could never even imagine. They say finding love later in life is just so much more special because you've got your baggage, you've got your junk, and despite that, you show up for each other and you choose each other every single day. And we did, and we have, and we've weathered some difficult challenges, and we have found some joy in just ordinary things, and fun things. And he really did over the last 10 years become he was just my number one encourager. If I wanted to try it, he was like, go for it. It might be silly, but I would say, I'm going to bring home a llama. And he was like, okay, I'll build the pen. He never capped any dream, anything that I wanted. He was like, nope, that's not silly. That's not crazy. And so he encouraged me in 2018 to step out of my box again and go into the world of competitive bodybuilding. So in 2017, I started training. And in 2018, I did my first bodybuilding show. And that's where I met my unbelievable best friend, Krista, who is Lee's wife. And it was so funny. You want to talk about imposter syndrome, but if you've ever been in the backstage of a bodybuilding show, like people have got physiques and it is a place for your self-confidence to get pushed to the edge. Everyone around you, they look incredibly confident, incredibly fit, and so impossibly qualified. I was like, what the hell have I got myself into? Like, what am I doing here? And then this blonde who was so amazing, she just kept tapping me on the shoulder. She's like, hi, I'm Krista, and I've never done this before, and I am scared out of my mind. Have you done this before? And I'm like, shut up. Like, I get out of my, like, are you trying to get in my head? And it was so funny because we just became very fast friends. And it was so funny because, you'll have your hecklers in the audience, and they'll be out there kind of yelling. Your coaches will yell from the audience about certain posing and ways to do it. And we didn't realize at the time, but my husband and Krista's husband were sitting side by side, and Krista and I are the same height, so we always competed together. Oh, perfect. And they would just yell these great, turn to the left, and she's got you in the abs, and this and that. And it was so much fun. And afterwards, Krista's like, let's go out. Like, let's just get together. And I was like, I text my husband, who was in law enforcement, and I was like, hey, there's this crazy lady that I met, and she wants to go out. And Joe's like, we don't go out with crazy people. And I'm like, I don't think she's crazy. I think she's like the ha-ha crazy kind. And we went out, and we had such a great time. But to have a friend like that, she wasn't worried about what people thought. She really was confident in herself as a first-time competitor, as somebody who could just reach out, and she could see through everything. She just knew. She just knew that I struggled. She knew that I had that space, and she made space for me, and she made that friendship real, And I think a lot of people who do deal with imposter syndrome, especially women, we don't often open up to other women. We just, again, I don't want you to see my vulnerabilities. I don't want you to see that I'm not as cool as you are, as pretty as you are, as talented as you are. And over time, we shared our experiences. It turned into a great friendship, and it ultimately changed the trajectory of my life. She would say to me, you're way too smart to be a teacher. You need to come and work for us. And every conversation was met with the same response. I would tell her, maybe, but not yet. And okay. And then the next conversation, you should come work for us, And I wasn't quite sure. I could just see that there was something there. And so Lee was great. And she would tell Lee, Nicole needs to come work for us. And Lee was like, when she's ready, we're here. When she's ready. Corporate America was never part of my plan, ever. Like, I had an aversive reaction to it. I was like, no, why would I ever want to work around that type of people? Like, ugh. I was an educator, right? Like, sure. I loved students. I loved schools. I loved, making bulletin boards and cupcakes on Friday and having pizza parties. Like, I never thought of myself as entering corporate America. I had always said, I want to make a difference in people's lives. which is ironic to say now because I get that opportunity. But I kept telling myself I don't belong in corporate America. I would say I want to go back to education, but when I really sat down and thought about it, it was I didn't belong there. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't know the language. I couldn't interact with those people. My gosh, it would be like dropping me down in a foreign land and asking me to be successful. I kept saying, I'm just a teacher. What would I ever do there? Why would anyone ever take me serious? And then, like I mentioned before, COVID hit. And I think it changed so many things about so many people. And I started to watch education shift. And that could be a whole podcast probably in and of itself. But a career that I loved overnight became unrecognizable to me. I really started to say my values aren't aligning here anymore. I'm fighting to make an impact. I'm fighting to do the things that I believe are right. And the work just became so heavy. And the challenges became more complex and more difficult. And I found myself starting to say, asking myself a question that I had avoided for so long. And that question came out one night, and I asked my husband, I said, what if God wants me to do something different? What if my story in education, what if God's put the period on it? Like, what if? And it really wasn't that I wanted to leave education. I couldn't shake that feeling that there was something different, something more out there that I was supposed to be doing. I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know what it was. And that feeling, it scared, I don't know if I can say this, it scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
It really did. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, but I know I was being pulled in a certain direction. So one evening, a couple bottles of wine later, I called Lee and I said, I'm in. That's all I said. I'm in. And he said, are you sure? I said, I'm in the car on my way. I'm in. And we sat on his back patio and we talked about transferable skills. We talked about future opportunities. And he said, take the summer, think about it, and then let's reconvene in August. And I said, nope, I can't do that. I got to do it now because if I don't jump, then I'm going to go back to what's easy. I'm going to go back to what I know. I'm going to go back to what's safe. And we had that conversation the last day of school, which was May 24th. And I started with Unleashing Leaders June 1st. Like, I don't even know if it was 2 weeks, but I just knew I had to jump.
I like that you recognized back then, again, back to what you said in the beginning of this, change is hard.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go back to what's safe. If it's not now, then I'm not going to do it because I'm going to go back to what's safe.
Yeah.
So again, everything full circle, right? As you're like, I love studying people. And now I get to, it's a beautiful full circle thing. Continue.
It is. It's great.
Nicole, I do want to ask you, do you think that when you met your husband and he started to really see you, right, versus the imposter, and then meeting Kristen, with everything colliding like that, did you find that was maybe a time in your life where you stopped trying to achieve more and more and more and more? Like, did you start to also allow the feedback and maybe the recognition from them both as, her being a first-time competitor with you? Like, that's hard. I've done that. Those are gnarly shows.
Yeah.
That's wild. But even with him to recognize, like, okay, is this Nicole or is this the imposter? Was there a moment, do you think, is that where it maybe started for you to, oh, you're right, maybe settle or at least recognize?
I think I started to recognize the separation between the imposter voice and the fact that it was okay to let people see me. I didn't have to be perfect and people were still going to love me. I didn't have to prove my worth as a friend. Kristen knew it. She felt it. Even when I couldn't show up the way that I probably needed to, she recognized it. She knew it. She's just said, but you're my friend. And that's just ebbs and flows of life. I don't need you to prove anything. You don't have to prove that you're worthy of my friendship. You've already got it. And then the same with Joe. I think it was, I had spent a lot of years blaming myself for divorce. I had spent a lot of years saying, well, if I could have done this or I should have done this. And he finally said, he said something really impactful to me one night. He said, stop doing the time for somebody else's crime. And so will I always be chasing something? Maybe, but I think that's just because of my passion for learning.
Sure.
But I can sit now and be proud of my accomplishments. Because when you have cheerleaders, like I have with Krista, with Joe, with Lee, with several other really close friends of mine, and they're genuine. And I don't have to look at them and say, what do I owe you? You know, what do you expect out of me?
Sure.
And feel it. Like it feels genuine and it feels real. And I think when you have that, you can start to really trust those people, and you can start to really listen to what they're saying as truth and not just somebody who needs something.
Right. Not everyone has an angle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And those people are definitely folks that don't have that angle. And they've proven that to me, and they've showed me that, it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to just be you. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to learn. It's okay to say, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I want to, and I'm going to find the people who will help and show up for me in that space. So it was really good. Um, but yeah, during that season of life, I prayed. I prayed constantly. I'm a deeply faithful person. I don't know necessarily about religion, but deeply faithful. I have a great relationship with the Lord above. And I started asking him for clarity. I didn't ask him for a new job. I didn't ask him for, money or anything like that. I just said, if this is the door that you're going to close, I need you to give me the strength to push through this new one, because I'm scared and I don't know what I'm doing. And this is a really difficult spot for me to be in. And when I walked into corporate counseling or corporate consulting, excuse me, after 15 years in education, I felt like a beginner all over again. At 43 years old, I felt like the new kid. And overnight, I went from that person of being the person that people came to. I had the expertise, I had the experience, I generally had the answers. And I had to be the person who was asking questions. And I had to be the person that was learning a whole new language, new terminology, new processes. And I was looking around wondering, where was this handbook that everybody else seemed to be operating from? And I didn't get that. Like, where is this handbook? Where is this dictionary that's going to tell me how to make this job work? And there were times where, every meeting that I was in, it felt like a test. I was like, oh my gosh, every new acronym made me wonder if I had made a terrible mistake. And I remember telling my husband, I think I really messed up. I think I really messed up. And he's like, you've gotten yourself into this. We're going to find a way to get through it. And I appreciated that, because I was sitting in rooms with very accomplished people, and the voice inside my head came back, and it kept saying, you're just a teacher. You're just a teacher. I wasn't supposed to be there. And I started to think, my God, someone is going to come and realize that. And someone is going to tell Lee, you made a huge mistake in hiring this person. Like, what were you thinking? She's just a teacher. And that voice just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And it was like every degree that I had earned, and every success that I had encountered, and every experience in developing humans didn't matter. It just didn't matter. All of those things had just been left behind. And I was suddenly this person who had no value at all. I didn't have anything to add to any conversation. I didn't have anything to meet somebody who was giving me advice, mentoring me. I didn't have anything to give them back. And I really got like I got in my head, and I didn't realize that feeling for me, it wasn't new. I had experienced it as a kid, standing on the pageant stage. I had experienced it in graduate school, standing backstage at the bodybuilding competitions. This voice inside my head was not new. The story it was telling me was nothing different. It's just the environment had changed. The circumstances had changed. But I quickly started saying, I am not just learning a new profession. I am rebuilding who I am. I am rebuilding my identity. I'm not just a teacher anymore. Now I am a change management consultant. And I look back now and I say that transition really wasn't about changing the work. It was about peeling the label back. It was about peeling back and exposing those beliefs that I had carried with me my whole life. I just didn't want to see it. So I stayed safe. And Lee would say, hey, let's get you over here in this. I was like, no, I'm good. I was doing his scheduling, which I was not very good at anyways. So I think he was like trying to like push me out of that.
No, really?
Yeah. He's like, no, really, you should do this. But I had always believed that, confidence came from experience, and I wasn't good at anything. I didn't have the confidence until I had an experience. I had to have X amount of years experience. But what I didn't, but that goal, that X number kept moving. So when I was teaching, it was 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And now here I was like, well, when I work for UL for 5 years, I'm finally going to know what I'm doing. And it wasn't about that at all. It was really about redefining how I showed up in confidence. I had the competence. My gosh, if you can manage a room full of 37-year-olds without somebody getting stabbed with a pencil, I'm pretty sure you can walk into a boardroom and help some really smart individuals figure some stuff out. I just didn't know that yet. So I had to really start, I had to change the story. I had to start changing how I looked at things. And I started to say, what if confidence isn't about knowing? What if it's built by being willing to start over? And so about a year, this is a great story. And I know when Lee listens to this podcast, he will laugh. But about a year into the career, I found myself riding with Lee in his little Honda Civic to the Metro Chamber Leadership Conference in Sun Valley. And I will say, I don't know if being trapped in the car for 3.5 hours with your boss should be considered a leadership exercise or an HR violation. I don't know. Maybe it's even an endurance sport. But either way, I was driving across that flat area between like Mountain Home and Haley, thinking, if I bail out at 65 miles an hour, like what's the worst? It couldn't be any worse than what I'm experiencing right now. And I will caveat the story before I even started by saying Lee had called Joe and they had had a conversation, and Lee had shared with Joe, like, I need to push her out of this nest. Like, she's doing fine. She's a great addition to our organization, but she is worth so much more. And I've got to get her out of that. My husband was like, do whatever, just don't end up on the front page of the newspaper. But every day I had really felt like I was trying to prove something. I was trying to prove that I deserved the opportunity and that I was worthy of Lee's trust. I mean, they had become such good friends of ours, and he had put so much trust in me. I was telling myself every single day I had to show up and tell the people he made the right decision and hire me. I had to make sure that everybody knew that I wasn't a bad hire. And I had gotten stuck. That voice inside my head had just gotten relentless. You're not experienced enough. You're not smart enough. Eventually they're going to find out that they've hired the wrong person and you're going to get fired. That voice just played constantly in my head. And I guess it was loud enough for people outside my own head to start hearing it, because somewhere on the drive, Lee stops talking about work and he started asking questions. And they weren't the kind of questions that I was used to answering, right? I couldn't just say, oh yeah, it's okay. It's fine. It's good. They were not yes or no questions. They were the kind of questions that literally make you want to jump out of the car. They were uncomfortable. They were difficult because they were true. And they were questions and they were conversations that I need to have. And he really started calling out the stories. And he called them by name. And the stories that I had been telling myself, he started to really push back on. Every reason that I gave for why I wasn't ready. And every time I told Lee I wasn't qualified for this or that, he would push back. And not the easy, like, kind pushback, like the solid, no, that's not true. So you need to stop telling yourself that kind of pushback. So I started, offering more excuses, and I got stronger with him, and he just dismantled it. At some point, it felt less like a conversation and more like someone holding up a mirror. And you've had that moment where someone's like, you have to look in this mirror, and you cannot look away. And it was that painful conversation that literally, it just broke me. I think for the first time, I had someone call me out on that voice and really finally say the words, you are in your own way. You are your own roadblock. And so somewhere along that highway, I broke. And it wasn't that cute, like, composed, wipe a little tear away. No. It was an ugly cry. And I had snot and tears coming out of places I didn't even know. I mean, like, the one, I think it was like a Wendy's or a in and out napkin that's like half paper. It was not doing the trick. I mean, it was bad. I had mascara running all the way down me, and I couldn't get away. My dignity was on the dashboard, and it was okay because now, I can laugh about it now. I can laugh about it now. We all can. But at that time, I felt like years and years and years of self-doubt, of questioning who I was, what my worth was, just literally was pouring out.
Was it like a full release, full surrender almost? Just
Yeah,
finally,
it was.
like
It
a
was an
purge.
acknowledgement. It was somebody finally was challenging me to answer for something I couldn't answer for. To tell myself, well, I'm not qualified enough. You have 3 degrees, lady, right? Like you spent 15 years helping people. Tell me why you're not qualified. It was this idea of really, I don't know. I mean, Lee wasn't trying to convince me that I was talented. He was really trying to convince me to stop arguing with the evidence that proved it. He saw something, countless people saw things that I just couldn't see in myself. And he laid them on the table. And he forced me to look at him. And he forced me to be proud of him. And he forced me to say, I'm enough. I deserve to sit at this table. And he reminded me of the lives like throughout my career in education, as a mom, as a friend, the things that I had done. You know, the people who trusted me, the work I had accomplished, and the courage that it had taken to just leave a career. Not just any career, but leave a 15-year career that I was really, really proud of and start over. He just he acknowledged how hard it was. And he acknowledged that it wasn't easy for me. And then he asked me to consider that maybe, just maybe, the biggest obstacle in my life was me. That it wasn't another degree or another certification, it was me. I was the one who was holding myself back.
That had to be a lot.
It was a lot.
That's a lot.
It was a lot. And he was, you know, I tried every which way to blame somebody else. Oh no, it's because I can't get on this contract. Or, oh no, it's because the RFP says I have to have an MBA or whatever. And he was like, just stop. Just stop. And then somewhere, my tears were so blurry, I don't even know where we were at. We could have been in Vegas by that point. He asked me a question that I would never forget. And he asked me, he said, which voice are you going to let be louder? And I had to really sit on that because there was a voice that says, you know, you're not enough. And there's a voice that says you can't do this. And then there's a voice that says you're created for more. There's a voice that says you can do this. You have the tools. You have the faith. You have what it takes. And that question stayed with me for a really long time after Sun Valley. You know, we pulled in and my face was swollen, my eyes, and my husband was like, who just beat you up? And Lee was like, not me, not me. I only did what you said I could. And I fell into my husband's arms and I just said, I think I can do this. I think I really finally realized what I was supposed to do. And I think in that moment, I realized that the imposter syndrome, it wasn't simply something that was happening to me. It was a voice inside my head that I had given the power to for decades. I had sold myself short for so long saying, I'm not worthy. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I would never be able to do that. It wasn't, you know, I wasn't the victim of imposter syndrome. I was letting it win. Time and time again, I was letting it win. So not long after that trip, I was asked to do a book study within Unleashing Leaders. And I picked up Valerie Young's book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. And I turned the pages and I started seeing myself unfold in it. The research, the proof, the different types of imposters. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's writing about me. Like this is me. And every confidence type and everything that she talked about in the book really started to give the language to the patterns, to the stories that I had lived with for so long and just dealt with them, right? They were just there. And I finally was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not defective. I have just really given this imposter voice way too much power for way too long. And so for years, I thought, I got to get rid of the voice. I got to get rid of it. You know, I've got to find a way to silence it. And I fell right back into those old patterns. If I just work a little harder, she'll go away. If I just earn another degree, if I just get another certificate,
No.
yes, if I just do this, if I just, you know, show up in this space, or if I just take this on this role at work, or if I just throw myself out there, then the voice will go away. And it didn't. I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't have this, I had had this amazing conversation and this amazing epiphany in life. And I felt so powerful. And then I was right back on my knees. And I was right back saying, maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and feel like I belong. Maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll love this job and I'll feel like I'm competent in this job. But it didn't come. It didn't come.
This is so wild because you would think that once you recognize it, right?
Yeah.
That, oh no.
Yeah. And I did in that meantime, I did the Leadership Boise program. And I walked through that and I shook hands and I showed up in great confident ways. And again, I would sit at tables with our planning committees and at the, government days and all the different days and I just thought, oh my gosh, these people are so much smarter than me and they're so much more accomplished than I am. And they're going to find out and they're not going to want to even they're going to not even going to want me on their planning team because they're going to find out that I'm just not this leader that they think I am. But, I had also during that time, because my brain can't just stay on one track, I started to question a lot of other things. And I started to have the conversations at work through a book study. And women in our office or our company, they started to say, I feel that way. Wait a minute. How can you feel like an imposter? You seem like you have it all together. Look at what you're doing. You're coaching us. You're facilitating these great trainings. What do you mean you don't feel confident in it? I don't feel confident in it. And I was looking at those same women in our organization saying, I want to be you when I grow up. Like if I could just have an ounce of your confidence, I could get this thing done. And it was so, I think, cathartic for so many of us to be able to look at one another and say, well, if you don't have it all together, then it's okay for me not to have it all together. And I value your opinion and you value mine. And there was this really just great moment where we all kind of looked at each other and we said, okay, when that voice pops up, you're like, we became each other's like sponsor, right? Imposter sponsor, where I was like, okay, when you have that moment and you're working on this giant deliverable for a high stake, highly political client, I want you just to call me or just send me a text and I will remind you that you can do it. It was a really good moment and it lasted for probably a good 6 months. And I just started saying, okay, here she comes. She's coming back. She's coming back. And I just kept picking up that book and I just kept rereading it. And I just kept picking up small little nuggets. It's a lot of book. I highly recommend the book to anybody, but I also say I read it all at once and then I had to go back and I had to reread certain parts of it that I was like, okay, here's what I'm struggling with. And I started to say, oh gosh, I'm, a perfectionist. So that means that mistakes mean failure. I'm not allowed to make mistakes because mistakes mean failure. Well, in our organization, we say fail fast, fail forward. So I've got to learn how to make mistakes and I've got to embrace those mistakes and I've got to figure out a way to be okay sitting in the ick of making a mistake and trying again and being iterative in how I think about things. I started saying, gosh, I fall into that category of being an expert because I just keep collecting degrees and certifications because surely if I just got one more credential or I got one more degree, I would be more qualified and people would start to take me seriously. And then I finally just put the book down. I put it down. And when I was able to put it down and look and step back and realize that I can't get rid of that voice. She's part of who I am. And she's just really that space of me that pushes me, that drives me, that makes me motivated, gets me up in the morning. I really started to say, okay, so how do we start to love her? How do we start to recognize her as part of who I am? And that person is highly qualified and smart and capable and well-deserving. How do I invite that person to the table who wants to squash that in me? So I was reading the book and the final chapter, I had to go back and revisit a couple of times, but the book doesn't recommend that you eliminate imposter syndrome. A lot of high achieving folks, the thoughts are going to appear from time to time. And the more you squash them, the louder they get. So I gave her a name. And she's the version of me who believes that I have to be perfect in order to be worthy. And she's the one that will whisper that everybody else has it figured out. Why don't you? And she's still the one who occasionally wanders and comes in and says, I wonder, you've done a really good job of fooling everybody. And when she starts believing that, when she starts saying that, and I start to hear that, I just stop her and I smile and I thank her for trying to protect me. And I give her credit for pushing me. And then I just gently tell her, you can sit this one out. I got it. I got it from now on. Because she doesn't get to make that decision for me anymore. I think I missed out on so many opportunities because I let her make the decision that I couldn't do it, that I wasn't worthy enough, that I didn't deserve that opportunity. So now when she says that to me, I'm like, cool, thanks. Moving on, right? Because my courage is what dictates the opportunities that I take. And my faith and my purpose, those are the things that drive me now. Those are the things that help motivate me. And that is the voice that will always be louder than that imposter. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not afraid. That doesn't mean that fear sometimes doesn't get the final vote. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I finally decided that I want a permanent reminder of that truth. So I got a tattoo. Yes. And I tattooed the words, I am enough. So that every time that I wonder and every time that little voice gets a little bit too loud, I can just look down on my foot and I can remind myself that I am enough. And it is covered, that tattoo is then covered in a dandelion. I don't know if you know the story of the dandelion, but a dandelion, people often look at a dandelion and they'll see a weed. They'll see something that's not wanted or something that's just plain and ordinary, and it needs to be pulled out before anyone notices it. But there's also something entirely different about that dandelion, that people see wishes in a dandelion. They see hopes and dreams. And it's a reminder to me that even the smallest of seed can travel further than anyone really expects it. And it can plant itself and it can bloom in the most unexpected of places. So really, for most of my life, I just saw myself as that weed, right? I really wasn't enough. I needed to get myself out of the situation before anybody noticed. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. But today, I choose, and it is a choice. I get up every day and I see myself as that wish. I look at myself and I say, I'm not perfect. My gosh, I'm so far from perfect. And I know that that voice is still there, but I've realized that I'm stronger than that voice, and that positive voice is louder than she could ever be. And I've stopped believing the things that she says. I often can just put her on her shelf and say, thank you. You don't overcome imposter syndrome by becoming more impressive. And you overcome it by becoming more honest and more vulnerable. You become honest about the stories that you tell yourself. And you become honest enough to challenge them. And you become vulnerable enough to get the help and the support that you need to change them. And you show up and you make mistakes and you fall down. And as my dad would say, you just dust yourself off, put one foot in front of the other, and keep on trying. The world doesn't need a perfect version of me. The world doesn't need a perfect version of you. It just needs an authentic one, and it needs a real one. And I think that as people maneuver change and they go through change and they try to navigate it from that emotional standpoint, they need real, genuine people to show up and help walk them through it.
That's a lot. Thank you. I think everything you shared is, there's so many, all the emotion that you're going through that I'm seeing because I'm sitting right near you, so I can see it. And just the understanding of you coming to that full circle place of like, okay, it's not something you squash, it's something I live with. Beautiful realizations that took you had to get there your own way. Like no one can ever tell us. I think in life, whenever we're doing something that someone sees that we're in our own way and they tell us or we're making a mistake, you can tell us all you want. But if we're hard-headed and we need to do it ourselves and we need to learn, we have to come to that realization ourselves. It has to be that full circle moment for us internally to recognize it. So I thank you for sharing and for giving so much beautiful insight on this is legit, that a lot of people go through, that a lot of women, especially when you don't know because they're not sharing it, we're trying to put up that front. A lot of people are, but vulnerability and authenticity is really everything. And recognizing that all we do, if it's our best, that it is enough and it should be, and we should be the ones to accept that the most. So,
And be proud of that.
Yeah.
I mean, really, we show up, we do our best, and be proud of that, even mistakes and all.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Of
I will say I was
course.
so nervous to do this, but gosh, you made it so easy, and
It's
it was really fun to finally get to talk about it. Talk about her. I call her like she's sitting here next to me,
Yeah.
but that little voice inside my head, and being able to live with her and come to terms with her, and thank the people who have really shown up in helping that moment become full circle. Yourself included.
I'm
Yourself
grateful.
included.
I'm grateful that you shared. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.